Hi, this is the Business Guy. So how many bank accounts do you need for your LLCs? Let's say you have an LLC that you set up to run a business or own real estate or for other reasons, and it's pretty clear you'll likely need a bank account so you can operate the business. Why? Well, because if you pay the company's bills out of your own bank account, the court will use that and say, hey, you didn't operate that LLC as a separate business. You were just getting paid by customers or tenants and paying the company's bills out of your own personal bank account. So it wasn't really the company doing business here, it was just you. So they don't need to sue your company, they just sue you personally. And off they go, walking down the street with your bank account, your household belongings, your car, your investments. Maybe they seize your personal residence or whatever else they can get their hands on. And if your LLC doesn't have a separate bank account, the courts won't recognize it as an independent entity. They'll just rule that it doesn't exist because you didn't treat it as a separate entity. So let's say you have multiple LLCs. You have some to hold real estate, so when somebody sues you for an injury on one property, that lawsuit doesn't act like a domino effect and take away all of them from you. So let's say you have one LLC in Wyoming, one in California, one in Texas, one where I live in Florida. Then you have your Nevis LLC that has a big bank account with a debit card attached to it. So people ask, how many bank accounts do I need for all those LLCs? Now I'm going to keep buying real estate and I'm going to set up an LLC for every property, very smart. And if you have 20 LLCs in the next 5 years, that's just way too many freaking bank accounts, they say. Now ideally you have one bank account per LLC, but yes, that is going to be a lot to deal with. So say you want to simplify your life so you don't have so much administration to deal with. Well, first of all, you can open all of your LLC bank accounts with the same bank, except for the offshore one. And even if you do have an LLC in Wyoming, California, Texas, and Florida, you can open a bank account at Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Chase, or a bank that has branches in all of the states where you have LLCs. And choose just one bank so you can give the bank your address. You can tell them you have out-of-state companies because you own real estate there, if that's how you use them. And the benefit for having a separate bank account for each property, that is for each LLC that owns each property, is for accounting purposes. So your bookkeeper can more easily tell you exactly how much each property makes or how much it lost. And then for legal protection purposes, the judge sees that you have separate bank accounts for each LLC. There's little doubt that you're treating them as separate entities, as long as you're paying the bills and receiving income in those separate bank accounts. So how much did your Florida LLC make? You can look online, you could look at your LLC's bank account statement and the numbers your bookkeeping program spits out and all the profits and losses for that one piece of rental property are right there in the records of that LLC and its bank account. In addition, since all of your accounts are in the same bank and you've made sure to link your accounts, you can simply move your money from the LLC account over to your personal account and pay yourself. One of the accounts gets short, you can document it and lend it some of your own money and some of the money from one of your LLCs. So that's how it works if you have separate bank accounts, one for each LLC. Okay, now let's say you say, I don't want all those dang bank accounts. I just want something simple so I don't have so much work. Okay, since you asked, let's simplify things even further. So you don't want all those bank accounts. So what do we do? What we do is we set up one centralized management company that collects all the rent for all the properties. One LLC manages all of the properties and collects all the rents for all of the LLC's properties. And it's a lot like you hired an outside agency and that company deals with all of your tenants on all of your properties and collects all the rents. So you have all the money go in and out of that one LLC. Now each LLC owns a separate property, but up here you have a management company that manages each of these LLCs and collects all the money and pays all the expenses. Let's go ahead and illustrate this on the iPad. So here's an investment property. What we do is we put each property into a land trust for an extra layer of privacy, and then we make the beneficiary of that land trust an LLC. That's how we do it in practice. So let's take a look at how this looks with multiple LLCs. You have each property in a separate land trust, and you have a separate LLC as beneficiary of each land trust. So that gives you privacy of ownership when a land trust is entitled to each property, and then the LLC gives you the asset protection and lawsuit protection. Now, what do we do for banking purposes? What we do is up here, as the manager of these LLCs, okay, we set up one Wyoming LLC here, okay, and that acts as the manager in two senses here. Sense number one, it is the manager of these LLCs. And number two, it is the property manager. So it manages the properties. So the Wyoming LLC is what interacts with your tenants and collects all the rent. So all of the money that you collect from your tenants go into one company. Let's say you were to hire an outside company, an outside agency to manage your properties. It would be the same thing. They would be collecting the rent. But in this case, we're talking about your company, a company you own, one central company that collects all the rents. And even if you do have a separate property manager, we're going to talk about that in a little bit, in your out-of-state property, all of the money they'll collect in their own company, and they pay your one central company. So that's what we do in practice. So you only have one bank account that collects all the money. It still has this separation. So each property is in a separate LLC here, land trust and LLC. So you have the legal protection so that a lawsuit here doesn't affect a property here, right? And like we say, you can even have this company here on top register as the manager of all of your other LLCs. And you can even go one step further. After you set up your bank account, you can change the manager of that one master LLC and hire our nominee privacy service to keep your own name out of the public record. So your tenants ask for a new stove or refrigerator and you say, hey, I just work for the company. I don't own the property personally. And you'll be telling the truth because you won't. It'll be in your land trust. The land trust is owned by the LLC. Your LLCs own them and your other LLC manages them. So your one manager LLC interacts with your tenants, or your out-of-state property manager deals with them all, and all the money flows into the one LLC that manages all of the other LLCs. Now keep in mind there are two distinctly separate buckets. In one bucket is how the LLC is taxed. Now the IRS by default will typically tax a single member LLC as non-existent for tax purposes. From their perspective, for tax purposes, the LLC that's a single member by default is just treated as a sole proprietorship or as a partnership if you have two or more members. Either way, the profit and loss just passes right through the company to your own personal tax returns. But to the court and how it protects you from lawsuits, that's a totally separate bucket altogether. In order to protect you from lawsuits, you need to treat it as a distinctly separate entity from you as a person. And one of the first things to do after making sure the LLC is set up properly and professionally is to set up a separate bank account. Okay, let's take it up a notch. We set up LLCs in all 50 states as well as offshore, usually for asset protection from lawsuits. One of the best countries in the world for asset protection is the Caribbean island of Nevis. That's Nevis. And we've set up more LLCs in Nevis by far than anybody in the world. Not for tax purposes. U.S. people are taxed on worldwide income. It's to protect assets from lawsuits. And the offshore LLC gives you the most powerful asset protection when it's inside of your offshore asset protection trust. So you can go ahead and see our videos on that topic. So let's say you have all these companies down here that own the property and somebody sues your management company. What you do is you scoot all the money from it to your offshore bank account. It doesn't own any property, so there's nothing to take. And you just have to set up another management company for you, another Wyoming LLC that manages all of your property. And the management company that's in the lawsuit really has nothing to take. So each property in turn is in its own LLC, so a lawsuit on one property doesn't jump over to the other properties. So your management company is one cubbyhole. Each property is its own cubbyhole, so you don't have the domino effect and lose everything in one lawsuit. So if you decide to do it this way, you could have these LLCs hold title to the property or the land trust with an LLC as a beneficiary, and then this one company up here collects all the money. In other words, these companies down here don't have bank accounts at all. They're just associated with the ownership of the property. And your property management company up top is the only one that has the bank account. And if you go this route, the key thing is that you need to keep really good records so you know which property is making you money and which property, if any, is losing you money. So you need a good bookkeeper to keep close track of everything for you, and it would be a good idea for them to send you financial reports each month so you know what's really happening. And by the way, I also recommend you watch my video on how to get a mortgage in an LLC. That is, if you hold title or plan to hold title in an LLC, how you can go about getting a loan or refinancing the property. And in that video, we interview a friend of mine, a mortgage broker who's been in the business for about 30 years and tells us exactly how to get mortgages in our LLCs. Then when you have this money over here in your LLC bank account, okay, There's a way you can move the money over because you're using the same bank over to your personal bank account, right? And all that money comes over here and you can pay yourself, you can pay your own expenses, your own bills, and so on. And that way you can easily move money over there so you can use it for personal reasons. You can pay your personal bills, you can invest in other property, and so on. Now this, by the way, is your personal residence. We typically don't put that in an LLC. So if you don't like the idea of all these bank accounts for all these LLCs, there's a very, very simple way to do it by having one bank account in this Manage Your LLC, and that'll simplify your life. Okay, let's kick it up a notch. Let's say you want to grow really big and you want to have multiple properties in multiple states. You want to be a Grant Cardone. You might want to have one property management company manage all of your Florida properties, one property management company manage all of your Texas companies, Arizona companies, Alabama companies, and so forth. That is wherever you have property. So each property is in a separate LLC. Then you have 10 properties in Florida, one Florida LLC or Wyoming LLC as its manager that collects all of the Florida rents. Then you have another 10 properties in Arizona in 10 different Arizona LLCs, and then you have another Wyoming LLC as its manager, and so on. So as you grow larger, you can form a pyramid of LLCs, so to speak, in each state and maximize your asset protection from lawsuits. Because believe me, if you have all those properties, you're going to get in lawsuits. It's inevitable. So you have to have lawsuit protection, and you also want to keep your life simple with a centralized management company with one bank account for the management company or for each management company. So that gives you some options as you grow your real estate or other business portfolio. You have one central bank account for your management company. Or if you grow larger, as we said, you can have one management company in each state if you have lots of properties in more than one state. Again, just make sure to get somebody who keeps all of your financial records straight so you really get the true picture of what's going on in your financial life. Now, where does the foreign LLC fit into this picture? For the big piles of cash, we store it inside of the offshore LLC in a safe international bank account. And this makes it harder for some attorney to rapidly freeze your bank account. And having an international account is really easy as pie. You just log in, you see your account online, maybe you do stock trades, you wire money to yourself or others that you want to pay, you can buy things with your debit card, and you can also use the LLC for asset protection to record equity stripping lines of credit against the property to make it look mortgaged to the hilt and less attractive for somebody to sue you. And we can have a third-party lender to buy those mortgages, put the proceeds in your offshore trust, and so on. There are a couple of steps here, so be sure to see our video called Equity Stripping and how to do it right. So your central management company can pay you monthly, or you can have a true outside agency managing your properties. They can cut your central LLC a check each month. Either way, you can move some of your monthly profit over to your personal bank account and or your offshore bank account so you can pay your bills. Now, in what state do you set up the management company? I prefer setting up the management companies in Wyoming. That's my favorite place. They have asset protection that's superior to most other states, and the initial and annual fees are very reasonable. So your Wyoming LLC management company is the company that has the bank account if you opt for the central option to simplify your life. So for accounting purposes, you'll have your bookkeeper keep financial records for the profits and losses of each LLC, but all the money is going in and out of one bank account, and the other LLCs own property, but they don't have individual bank accounts. So the best way to do things is for each LLC to have its own bank account, but as you grow, that gets harder to do. That's ideal, but sometimes you get too big for that, and some personalities just can't handle all the complexity, and you'll want asset protection, but you'll also want to keep your life simple. You have a great option if you do. I hope you found this information valuable, and if you want to structure like we talked about, give us a call at 1-954-400-1050 or fill out a free consultation form at assetprotectionplanners.com. Please like, subscribe, and share this video. See you next time. This is The Business Guy.